Hello, darling. This is River Roaring, celebrating the luminous life force in us all. Hello, darling. I'm River Roaring. So did you know that your sexual arousal is yours and only yours? No one else has the right to decide when you're supposed to be sexually aroused or when you're not supposed to be sexually aroused. In addition, your arousal is not outside of your body that you have to try to find it somewhere. It's inside your body. And I'm going to show you on this podcast exactly how to find it inside your body. But first, I just want to talk about what the reason I think this issue is so important, because I know a lot of people who believe that they need porn to get aroused. And that means the arousal's out there. It's in the screen. And I need that or else I won't be able to get aroused. That's a false idea, but it's also very harmful and disempowering to think that the arousal's out there. So lots of people are watching porn. We know that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, as long as you know you own your own sexuality. What I find is that in this day and age, a lot of people are very dependent on some form of interaction with a machine to be aroused. And then when I talk to them, they're like, arousal? Well, let me get my machine. The other version of that doesn't have anything to do with machines is, if I had the right partner, all of my arousal issues would be taken care of. I'd be aroused often, easily. So I just need to find the right person. And then what that means is you're scanning other people all the time going, yes, no, 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 maybe, no, maybe. And that's pretty sad, because that's also so dependent on the outside world that if that exact right person isn't there at the exact right time, you can't get aroused. I had a really good friend, actually, who told me I can only be sexually aroused with a woman who has blonde hair and large breasts. And I'm like, really? It's the only way? He's like, that's the only way. So I have to look for this kind of woman, and then I think she's very pretty and exciting, and I get aroused, and that's no problem. But actually, that kind of is a problem, because now this other person owns his sexual arousal. And there's I felt really sad about that. It was like, wow, really? Like you don't feel like you could just get aroused anytime you want or be aroused anytime you want, with or without the help of this outside source. Some people have, that's the word fetish with a capital F. The true word fetish means an inability to get sexually aroused unless that item is around. And so that's, a very pure use of the word fetish. That means that person is completely dependent on an outside thing. It could be, let's just say, red high-heeled shoes. I also had a friend who met a man who had a blue jeans fetish, so there had to be blue jeans. She had to wear her blue jeans and pull them down. There was no other way for him to be aroused. And that is not owning your own arousal. That means your arousal's out there and you have to go find it, and you might get lucky, you might not get lucky. You get lucky every single day when you own your own arousal. And another thing I see a lot of people doing is, my friend had a very specific kind of person he needed to have, which is blonde hair and big breasts, which means he did not own his own arousal. But other people also, I see a lot more people thinking, well, the other person needs to be arousing. So if they're not arousing, then I can't get aroused. And I am here to tell you that is just false about the human potential. The human body and potential is that you fully own your arousal and nobody else owns it. And you will always decide if you're wanting to be aroused or not aroused, and you will always be okay with it when you are aroused. Yeah. And the other thing about not owning arousal in this culture that I see is boner shame. We have such a, it's such a built-in shaming that I have never even heard another person even mention it other than me. It's so built in and assumed that that's how it is or will be or shall be. And I don't understand why everyone isn't talking about it, because 1/2 of our population is shamed if a part of their body moves naturally. And that is really bizarre to me. And if you are a person who might get an erection and so therefore you try to not be aroused all the time by force so that you don't get an erection, that's giving away your sexual power to others and letting other people's judgments repress your arousal. Now, I know how deep it is in our culture because, like I said, I've never even met anyone else who talks about it. But this is a very big issue. With half the population not moving their body freely, we now know the body, mind, and emotion are all one thing. They're not separate things. So those same people do not have full access to their full emotional range because of the body repression. And they also don't have access to all the thoughts they could have and dreams and imaginations. Because I can walk around all day long fantasizing about sexual things and being aroused inside my body. And it doesn't show as much because I don't have an erection that shows. And so I'm owning my own arousal. And for every person who allows this deep, deep part of our culture called boner shame to keep their body in a certain place that it wouldn't be otherwise, that's not owning your own arousal. So I would love to see a culture shift where we have pride in all parts of the body and all movements of the body, and we let go of all that shame so that all of us can benefit from liberated, free people. So we can see all the ways, I mean, these are just some of the ways that not owning your own arousal harms us. Because now if all of the scenarios I painted just now, the person's dependent on this external source or they can't be aroused. And in the boner shame scenario, the person is repressing arousal to please the outside world 99% of the time during their lives when they're in public. And if you have a family, often in the private home, you don't want to show the boner either. So what does that leave? So let's learn how to own our own arousal. What would it mean if I own my own arousal? If I own my own arousal, I'll decide. And I can decide often, like the way that spring is right now in Austin, I'm talking about the weather. It is so stimulating. Spring is springing. The buds are just bursting out everywhere. Little flowers are just popping out everywhere. Green grass, because we just had some rain. It's almost like the plants are growing in front of our eyes right now. They're growing so fast and bursting out all over. The water's flowing in the river. That is enough right there for me to be highly aroused. I love to be aroused throughout the day. In fact, that's what we call in Tantra the ecstatic life, is allowing those juices to flow in life and having access to that creative sexual energy all the time. And then therefore being uncontainable. And so also, I don't depend upon an outside source to be aroused. So if I don't have that outside source, I can just choose to be aroused anytime and really enjoy myself. And I can choose to be aroused with a certain kind of person also. So let's say that this person I'm with is not any of my list of arousal categories. I still can allow my body to be aroused if I want to. I'm not dependent on blue eyes or big boobs or, a certain kind of, look or, tattoos, like I'm not dependent on any of these items or outside things. I'll decide if I'm aroused. It's actually extremely liberating. And when we liberate that part of ourselves, when we liberate and free and become sovereign over, meaning the external world doesn't control that part of me. I decide and I control it. I decide when. When we liberate and empower the most powerful energy in the human body, our sexual life force. That's why this podcast is Luminous Life Force. Our sexual energy is our life force. And when we liberate that, we can become luminous. Luminous life force. A person with luminous life force certainly has sovereignty over their own arousal and their own life force. So this can go on and on. I mean, there's so many explorations and cultivations and different kinds of versions of this and studies and disciplines, but I want to talk about just one today. There is a really cool way that any human being, it's free, it's just free, it just takes your time and your desire to do so. It's called opening the direct root of pleasure by waking the hands. So this practice is called waking the hands, and we're opening the direct root of pleasure. What's the direct root of pleasure? The direct root of pleasure is the root between the sensors on my hands, the nerve endings on my hands, through my arm, shoulder, neck, and into my brain to the part of my brain that senses and tells me I'm touching something. And it is soft or hard or prickly, warm or cold. So there's a direct connection in my body, which I own, and it goes from my hands to my brain, and it's the direct root of pleasure. And when I am feeling and touching, when I'm feeling and touching almost anything, I am switching over to consciously being aware of the delightful, wonderful, and almost never-ending, incredible, different sensations that can come into my hands when I touch things. At this moment, I'm touching these beautiful pants I'm wearing and my legs. And it's wonderful. I can feel tingles through my fingers, up my arm, past my elbow, up into my shoulder, all the way, because my direct root of pleasure is pretty open. So I decide what I touch and whether I'm enjoying it, and if I want to find something I enjoy touching even more, like this beautiful fur I'm sitting on, then I touch the fur and oh, that's even more delicious. I have even more different kind of tingles in the other arm right now because I'm touching this other object by waking my hands with an inanimate object because it doesn't have a personality, which sometimes is really nice for different reasons. I'm touching things that don't have a personality, so it can just be me with me. And I'm touching this bolster now too, and it's really got some very interesting, fine, furry qualities to it I'd never noticed before. It's very beautiful. I'm having a lot of pleasure. And this practice of waking my hands by touching and feeling inanimate objects must be inanimate, or else it's not the same practice. We're doing an inanimate object because we don't want it to have a personality right now for this practice. I don't want to be distracted. I want to be with me and my direct root of pleasure, which is from my hands to my brain. It's inside my body. I own it. I am sovereign over my direct root of pleasure, and I'll decide when I place my attention there and when I feel stuff and when my body, right now my arms are feeling like juicy, liquidy, and I'm really enjoying a lot of pleasure. Actually, it just went through my torso. It just went into my sacred space. So that's a lot of physical sensation as reaction to touching an inanimate object in my body, because I have cultivated my direct root of pleasure over time. So it's often very closed in this culture because we grow up in this culture, all of us grow up with messages of don't touch that, that's shameful to do, that's bad, stop touching everything, stop feeling everything. And we shut it down out of a healthy childhood adaptation. We shut it down. And so opening it back up actually takes practice, and that's the practice of waking my hands. I've been waking my hands on inanimate objects now for about 15 years. And so my direct root of pleasure is pretty wide open. I'm still excited about opening it more. And what that means is, with a small amount of touch, my hands touching and feeling objects, I can get pretty highly sexually aroused because my body is open and I own my direct root of pleasure. There's another way of getting pleasure, which is the indirect root of pleasure. And what that means is, like, as an example, I'm with a partner, we're touching, and I am touching my partner, and they're smiling, and they're moaning and groaning, and they're squirming and worming, wiggling and wiggling. And I love that. So that is more like visual information and sound information is coming into my eyes and my ears and going into my brain. And Betty Martin, Dr. Betty Martin, my teacher, and I call this the indirect root of pleasure. So direct root, I'm feeling stuff with my hand, and my body itself is getting lit up through roots and neural connections that are embedded inside my body, and I'm in charge of that. The indirect root of pleasure is my partner's moaning and groaning, and that's so lovely, and I'm getting a lot of pleasure out of that. The indirect root is based on some external source coming into my senses, in my eyes and ears, and I get pleasure. And that's a wonderful way of getting pleasure. That is extremely healthy and magnificent. The problem is, in our culture, that's all people do, because we have been so beat down, abused, traumatized to pull back in our sensory direct root of pleasure and cap it off so that we're not involved with our own bodies sensing pleasure through our bodies. Instead, we need that external source. And that's when the problem arises, because you want to diversify your portfolio, my darling. If you get stuck with just one only, as I see many people are, in fact, almost everyone I've ever met and worked with has started off this way because of our culture, not because of human nature, because our culture has beat out of us the direct root of pleasure till we shut it down, telling us it's not okay to be feeling everything. And so we're stuck in the indirect root of pleasure. That means that, refer to the earlier part of the podcast, now I'm back dependent on something outside of me for my pleasure and my arousal. So what all kinds of things can happen on that one? So what if I don't have access to the internal direct root of pleasure in my body that's mine to turn on and off, and instead I rely on the indirect root of pleasure, meaning an external source needs to show me something pleasing, or that I hear something pleasing, and now I am in pleasure and arousal. Well, what does that do to a partnership? If I'm having a sexual experience with you and I need you to do certain things or else I'm not going to be aroused, what does that do? A long list of things that puts pressure on the other person, that makes you very needy, that makes you dependent on them, that puts you into performing to try to get that response back so you can have a little pleasure. It puts you into goal orientation. It's where we get scripted sex. It's actually where we start manipulation happens there. Inauthenticity, because now when I'm touching you, I'm just looking for those buttons to get that reaction that I need to feel good. Airplane going over. So if I'm just trying to push a bunch of buttons to get you to do a squeal or a moan or a wiggle so I can feel good, then I'm not in my authenticity. I'm performing and I'm trying to even think it through. And I've got my mind involved. It's like, whoa, what did I push last time? Oh, I think if I stroke it this way, then she does this, and then that ought to do that, and then I'll feel good. Whew, then I'll feel better. So I want to invite you to step into your own sexual sovereignty. Develop your direct route of pleasure inside your own body, that you decide when it's on and when it's off. I also invite you to continue getting indirect pleasure through all of the beautiful things in the universe, such as walking through a museum, such as walking in nature, the greatest museum of all, such as being with a partner and they moan and groan and squeal and wiggle. Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful, but I'm not dependent on it. I'm not dependent on blue jeans. I'm not dependent on blonde hair and big boobs. I'm not dependent on a squeal or a moan. I'm not dependent on the porn. I'm not dependent on any of these things. I'll decide when I'm aroused, and I'll decide when I'm not aroused, and it's only my business. And I'm inviting you to develop the skills in your own body through waking your hands on inanimate objects. Lay back and relax. Even put a timer on for a few minutes if you want to. I know people who have done this practice every morning when they wake up for 6 months religiously and changed their entire life. Opening your direct route of pleasure with waking the hand practice is kind of like learning to play basketball. You can't learn it from a book. You cannot do it. You can't even learn it from watching videos. You could watch 1 billion videos, podcasts, books, and everything else like that, and you don't know how to play basketball. And the same is true with waking our hands. We only know by doing it. And if I'm learning how to play basketball on the basketball court with a real basketball, I'm not an NBA player when I first step out there. I might be someday. I'm not going to rule it out, even though there seem to be a lot of disadvantages in this moment. But that would take a lot of practice. So I would be going out there and really practicing the drills and teamwork and be practicing basketball. And then I would get better and better and better. And that's how it works with waking my hands and the direct route of pleasure. So as I said, I've been waking my hands for about 15 years, and I can allow myself to go into a orgasmic level pleasure state in probably a matter of seconds. I've never timed it. Maybe we should have timers like the sports cars, 0 to 60 in how many seconds, or 0 to 100 in how many seconds. I think that would be kind of funny. 0 to orgasm in how many seconds with waking the hands. So in this world that we live in right now, there are lots of things that are teaching us about sexuality and sensuality and spirituality that I find very dry and very boring. And then there are also lots of things that are teaching us about sexuality and spirituality and sensuality that I find to be overactivating if you're just getting started. For instance, walking into a play party or a kinky play party or a tantra play party, that's very stimulating. Moving sexual energy and having a kundalini awakening experience in your body, that's very highly stimulating and activating. But pleasure and arousal doesn't actually start there. All of those big experiences that are big blowouts of bliss, they all start with waking your hands and gently opening your direct root of pleasure inside your own body so you have full sovereignty over your own sexual arousal and pleasure. And when you can be inside your body like that and be in touch with your body like that, that is the starting place to start learning how to circulate sexual energy safely and in a grounded way. And that's the starting place for the big, beautiful, blissful Kundalini experience. It's not starting out there and blowing yourself out at the orgy. It's starting in your own bedroom, touching an inanimate object and waking your hands so that your body learns how to be awake and alive and stimulated inside, and so that your life force becomes luminous inside your own body. And it's from that place that you can now walk out and you can be comfortable with an actual Kundalini awakening experience, or in a play party where there's just so much going on at once. Sexually. It all starts with waking the hands. If you want to be grounded, if you want to be embodied, if you want to feel what's really happening through life. And this goes on and on and on. The learnings and teachings from the direct root of pleasure and waking the hands just branch out in almost infinite directions. And we start here in the weekend workshop, and then we branch out in all the directions. So I can give a podcast on this, sure. I could write a book about it, sure. But none of that would be the same as stepping into the physical room with me so I can show you what I mean, and I can guide you through gentle practices that waken your direct root of pleasure more and more. And then we can follow a lot of those branches, where this leads and what that means for you, and what doors that opens up, and then what doors that opens up. And that is what we do in the weekend workshop with River Roaring. You know, I've been a very, very active sexual player for a good 15 years. And I've also been a sexual full-time professional teacher for about 13 years. And those time periods overlapped. And the reason I'm saying this, and I've also trained with some of the best teachers in the United States of America, I would say the best, for sexuality. And all of that comes together in the weekend workshop, where I endeavor to give you the true embodied foundation and relationship with yourself, so that you have sovereignty over your own arousal and your own pleasure. And we see where that leads. We go through many, many open doors, and we add in some very magical and simple communication tools so that you can relate with other people clearly and go to new heights together with pleasure. By the end of the weekend workshop, we're all usually in love with each other. There's only 10 people maximum are allowed in, and we just journey together. We don't need plant medicine because we know that inside our own brains is something far more powerful. So please consider coming to join me in person for a weekend workshop here in Austin, Texas. If you were interested in what I talked about today and you'd like to take it a lot further and really dedicate just one weekend, in a way, it's a lot of time. In a way, it's a very short time. In one weekend, you dedicate it to this and you walk out a different person, because we don't just talk about it. We practice it and we go down the open doors that are opened once you have this, and you will learn so much more about yourself and your own life force and your own sovereignty over your life force, so that you can cultivate a very luminous life force. It's from this weekend workshop that I then feel so much better about people going out and exploring all the more wild environments, even plant journeys, plant medicine journeys. In Austin, there are so many things. Ladahan, contact improv, play parties of every variety, private ones, public ones, different types of shibari, performances, courses. There's an almost infinite amount of kink meetings and teaching meetings and learning meetings and play parties. There's so much to do. And I always feel so much better knowing that you've had this weekend workshop foundation to go into all those other places, so that you can stay embodied and grounded and have a luminous life force. Embody the earth and the heavens will chase you. I would love to hear if any of this has had an impact on you. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you if you didn't like what you heard today. Shoot me a line and tell me what you would like to hear. I'm interested in hearing from you. Leave a comment if you see this podcast in some social media place, or shoot me an email. Just check out my site at riverroaring.com and click on Let's Get Connected, Let's Talk River, and you can share your question, reflection, or insight, or your aha moment if you've been waking your hands and it's made a difference for you. There's a lot more behind the things I've introduced today, and I would love to be able to share more of those with you, because I am on earth to support those who are called to bring maximum love and light into their lives, to illuminate their life force, where all is sacred, connecting with you right now as you hear me, to create a cosmic web of love and light throughout the realms. There's a line of light between you and between me right now, and between every other listener, and we're creating a web of love and light throughout the whole cosmos, because we have some listeners all around the world. Because I believe that together we can step into a more harmonious vibration. We can fly higher. We can shift human consciousness forever for the highest good of all beings. So, my darling, may the love be with you, and may the love be with us all.